Got a fun show lined up for you today. It's all about purple martins, Doc.
Yes, birds.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to this one.
They're the largest swallow, and what makes these birds really unique is they're almost entirely reliant on human or man-made structures during the breeding season. You'll see the gourds and purple martin houses as you drive around, and so that's where they're nesting. And then when they go out and feed, they're feeding almost entirely on the wing, and so they're catching everything as they fly. They're only here just for a little portion of their annual cycle. Once they're done breeding, they form these large roosts. They've roosted at several different locations over time down in Nashville, and they can be 100,000 plus birds. Then they'll take another migratory path all the way down into South America, where they'll spend the non-breeding season.
Okay.
And then after that, they'll come back and the cycle starts again.
My question was, we have these birds that are just 9 miles south of Nashville. I wonder if our birds are joining that roost after they fledge before they head down to South America. That's when we decided to put radio transmitters on some of our nestlings to see if they join that roost. And the first year we put 6 transmitters on. 5 of those birds we detected at the roost. And so that kind of answered our question. And my next question the following year was, I wonder if other birds in other areas, the surrounding areas. And so that's when I reached out to David and said, hey, you guys have purple martins. Would it be okay if we started putting transmitters on your birds here? And so that's how that sort of all got started.
Awesome.
Won't you take me back to Tennessee?
The award-winning Tennessee Wildcast is on the air with the latest info about hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. This year, we celebrate the men and women of the TWRA responsible for 75 years of wildlife conservation. Now make welcome your host, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee Wildcast. We're glad you're tuning in. Thanks for watching, for listening. We got a fun show lined up for you today. It's all about purple martins, Don.
Yes, birds.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
Hey, we got time for a radio station
We
shout
got
out?
all kinds of time.
Okay, WDEH. We appreciate them so much in Sweetwater, Tennessee, where you can hear Wildcast from 7 to 7:30 every Saturday morning. So we appreciate them and our other radio partners as well.
Definitely. Appreciate those radio partners. Appreciate our TV partners and all of you out there watching and listening. So
Yeah.
It's great. And I'm excited about today's topic, something a little bit different. And I'm going to learn a lot because I don't know a whole lot about it. So
Me too.
it'll be a fun conversation. We have David Haney with us today. He's our bird conservation coordinator for the agency, and Miss Laura Cook, the bird research coordinator for Warner Park Nature Center. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. David, you're no stranger to Wildcast. You've been on a few times, but tell folks who you are and kind of a little bit of what you do in your role, and maybe a little bit of background on how you got to Tennessee and work for us.
Yeah, definitely. I've been involved with birds since, an early age when I used to do a lot of backpacking. And so I've been outside basically my whole life and just really enjoy birds and bird songs. And so eventually I started off as a finance major, and that didn't seem to work out for me. So I had an internship and then went back to school for wildlife biology and didn't know you could get paid for doing something this great. And so it's just really exciting to be in this career. And I've been with the agency about 10 years now.
Yeah.
Conducting bird research. And basically what we're doing is just trying to really look at the species that are of greatest conservation need. And so I'm focused on all the non-game birds and trying to keep them off the threatened and endangered list. And we're trying to remove some of those threatened and endangered species and just really work towards getting species off the list.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's funny you mentioned you get paid to do this. That's a common phrase around here. I can't believe I get paid to be outside and enjoy what's out here and help protect it and all that. So that's cool. And that's a big jump, finance and wildlife.
Yeah, I learned something today about David.
It surprises some people. So.
No, this is not the route I want to go. Awesome. Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you ended up at Warner Park. Have you always been a birder?
No, not really. I would say I grew up sort of similar with David, where my parents, we always had bird books around, and I knew all of the birds sort of in my backyard, but I didn't really aspire to be an ornithologist. I wanted to study coyotes, actually. So I did my undergrad in wildlife biology, and then I ended up getting my master's degree studying birds. And that sort of just started me down this path of birds that I wasn't really expecting to do. I did take a break from birds for a while. I worked for the Nature Conservancy for over a decade. I helped them with large-scale conservation planning for their science division. But then when we moved down here about 8 years ago, I started volunteering at Warner Park Nature Center and got really involved at their bird banding station and just kind of decided I do like birds and I want to do this. And that's how I ended up here.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Where were you doing that work, the large-scale conservation work?
Well, I worked for the sort of the central science division within the Nature Conservancy. And so I was living in Idaho and Seattle and then Virginia, but our office was based out of Arlington, Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neat.
But I got to travel all around and I love that job. It was a great job.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Tennessee.
Thank you.
This is a great place to be, too. In your title, it's bird, all caps. What does that stand for? I want folks to know when they see it on the screen.
Yeah, so it's an acronym for Bird Information Research and Data Program. And so it's the idea that, this program is doing research is the main focus of a lot of the stuff that we're doing. But another big part of it is that we are at Warner Park Nature Center. And so a big part of what we do is public engagement. So we have our bird banding station is open to the public. And we have school groups and homeschool groups and universities. So we do a lot of education and engagement as part of our research, which is, for me, it's a perfect blend of doing the research, but also really trying to inspire people to understand a little bit more about birds and the importance of, maintaining their habitat.
I never drive by there that the parking lot isn't almost jam-packed. You guys draw a good crowd.
We do. I mean, we're only 9 miles from downtown Nashville. And so when you're in the park, you sometimes feel you're really far away. But it is an urban park. We have over 1 million guests every year.
Wow. That's great.
How big, how many acres is that area there? Do you know?
It's I think it's like over 3,100 acres.
Wow. It's a big park.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fabulous.
We'll have to go down there and maybe do a show from there.
I know.
You're welcome. Come to the banding station.
That'd be awesome. And one other thing I want to touch on before we get too deep, you mentioned that, it kind of led me down this path. Volunteer and support. There's a link on your all's website where you can volunteer and help, and you're looking for those. Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a lot of different opportunities depending on, your interest and the amount of time you have from, so go onto the website. We'll connect you. And there's all sorts of ways to not only volunteer for the bird program, but to volunteer with Friends of Warner Parks, which is the program that supports the bird program at Warner Parks. And so all the full moon picking parties and everything else, they're always looking for volunteers too.
Awesome. That's warnerparks.org. So go check that out. And as we're going throughout the show today, you're going to see some video. You're going to see pictures. Graham Gerdeman, is that right? That's how you say that? He offered up some photos and video for us to use today to help, spice it up a little bit. And you can see these birds flying. You can see some pictures. So thanks to him for letting us use that. And you know him pretty well?
Oh, yeah.
He looked like he's got a great following on YouTube and a pretty cool site there.
Yeah, go visit his site.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's at Nashville Birder on YouTube and then Graham Gerdeman on Instagram. So anyway, all right, let's jump in. Purple martins. David, tell us, if you see a purple martin, how do you identify it? Let's start there.
Yeah. It'll be exciting talking about purple martins. And so they're the largest swallow. And so when you think of swallows, like barn swallows, tree swallows, they're the largest species in that group. And what makes these birds really unique is they're almost entirely reliant on human or man-made structures during the breeding season. And so you'll see the gourds and purple martin houses as you drive around. And so that's where they're nesting. And so they're usually in these colonies. And then when they go out and feed, they're feeding almost entirely on the wing. And so they're catching everything as they fly. They also get their water that way too. And so you'll see them skimming low over these water bodies, picking up. And so they really can consume a lot of insects and during the time that they're here. But, they aren't here year round. So they're only here just for a little portion of their annual cycle. And so once they're done breeding, which is about now, they form these large roosts, and they can be, up to 100,000 plus birds. And so recently, there's been a roost down in Nashville that I think we'll talk a little bit about later. But so these are occurring all over the eastern United States. And so once they're done with this pre-migration roost, then they'll take another migratory path all the way down into South America, into Brazil, where they'll spend the non-breeding season.
Okay.
And so, and then after that, they'll come back and the cycle starts again.
Well, that's cool. When I think of a migratory bird, I think of ducks and things like that. But this bird is a migratory bird, and it's a huge trek.
That sure is.
Yeah, and they're really small. I mean, they're pretty small birds, right? You said it's the largest swallow, but
Like a robin size, I'd say.
Okay, yeah, it's cool. I looking at the colors, it's a purple martin, but there's no real. It's got some blues, and I guess there's some purple there, but
it's a dark, isn't it? Yeah, deep color.
Yeah, it's a pretty bird. So
there's been a lot of activity out here around the houses that are right at the office, and it's been fun. I've been carrying my camera out there, putting it on the tripod, and getting some shots occasionally. As it progresses, and seen little heads popping out of there. Hey, feed me. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that it relies on man-made housing.
I know. Yeah, I learned something today.
So about that. I guess it's hard to know. I guess, but how long has that been needed? I mean, how did they survive before?
Well, Native Americans back in the day would put gourds up. And they would nest in those. There's some of the birds out west I've known for them to nest in some cavity, and so they're in cavities of trees and other things. They'll also utilize that if they need to.
Yeah,
but,
so they'll adapt if needed. Yeah,
but in the east, it's mainly probably
99.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
99%. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if and I saw this on the site too, if somebody wanted to put up some nests, can they? I guess at their home.
Oh, absolutely.
There's plans out there.
Yeah, the best resource is probably the Purple Martin Conservation Association. They're a nonprofit. They have great instructions on the siting of where you put the gourds or the house up is really important. They like to be close to a human structure, but they also need clearance, so you don't want them near trees. And there's some indication that they like to be somewhere close to bodies of water for them to get drinks. But the Purple Martin Conservation Association also sells, they've got great gourd systems and housing systems too. So if you're looking, that's the best resource.
Uh-huh.
Is there I know these out here are pretty high. Is that a factor too, certain heights? And
yeah, I mean, this is sort of a standard height that they use. But the idea is that, historically, way back then, they did roost in these cavities of trees, and so that just to be higher up. But the thing that's nice about these systems that they have now is that you can have a baffle like what you put on the pole, sort of like you do with bluebird boxes, and that can prevent things like raccoons and snakes from going up and predating the birds. Uh-huh. So these systems are really designed specifically for them.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned this time of year. We're late July, about to head into August, so the breeding has passed, right? And they're going to start roosting. You mentioned Nashville, so they're gonna be. You'll probably see huge roosting batches, or what I don't know what the term is there, but you'll see them up in the trees and maybe on buildings and things.
Apparently, they like classical music pretty well, because I remember a few years ago they took a liking to down near the Skirmerhorn.
That's right,
didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah, so they've roosted at several different locations over time down in Nashville. I know one was, the first one when I got here was over near the stadium along the side of the highway. And then that one moved the next year or two over to, I think, where the Titans practice, their practice.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
And so then
They must
after
be
that-
fans of the Titans.
That's right. And so after that, they moved over to the Schermerhorn.
Okay.
And so they were roosting there for several seasons, and now they've moved back over to the Titans. So I think they are Titans fans. and now the largest roost that's downtown is there.
Wow.
That
They're
location.
probably watching the new stadium being built.
Yeah, and there is a Purple Martin task force group that's really working and trying to get everyone engaged and involved and better communication amongst all the different groups and agencies. And Laura's really been involved with that effort.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hey, a fun fact I was just noticing on the notes, Jason, that you put together is the oldest recorded bird is 13 years and 9 months. Wow. That's a long lifespan for a bird, isn't it?
It's not, yeah. I mean, it's not typical, though. I would say for most migratory songbirds, surviving that first year is the most challenging. And then if they can survive it, a typical is probably 5 years. So a bird that can live, that individual that lived that long is pretty impressive.
Wow.
But that's not typical, I would say.
Okay.
Well, and I guess thanks to the work that y'all are doing with the tagging and banding, you were able to, track
Otherwise,
that bird
we'd never know that.
and know that fact. That's
Yeah.
cool. But so let's get into some of that. Let's start with the banding, I guess, and why we care. And, I guess that's the reason we care about these birds. That's why we're tagging and banding and tracking. But I'll let you, Laura, get into some of that.
Sure, yeah. So we do, at Warner Parks, we have been monitoring the gourds that we have there every year, and we document how many eggs there are, how many young fledge, and then we also are banding the young. And all of that information we're then submitting to the Purple Martin Conservation Association, who they're tracking that. So they have all these different folks who are documenting how many young are happening. And that just gives us indication of how the population is doing over time. So we've been doing that. We put our gourds up in 2000, and it took 9 years for us to get martins to start using them. They're kind of very particular about, so if you put up a gourd system or a housing system, don't be frustrated. It may take some time. But starting in 2010, we started to have young, and we began banding them and monitoring the nest and submitting that information. We also, for banding purposes, to have a banding permit, you need a permit through the USGS Bird Banding Laboratory, a federal banding permit, and also a state permit that we get through TWRA. And so our data at the end of the year, we submit all of our banding data to both the Bird Banding Laboratory and to TWRA for their so that they can use that for their research and as well.
Awesome. And our nests have been out here for a while.
Long as I can remember.
Yeah,
Really.
since I started working here. And so I guess we had birds for a while, and you were coming out here banding those and taking data from those, right?
Yeah, and so like I said, we've been banding for a number of years, and I would say we didn't learn a lot from banding. And that was because the only way to really learn anything from banding the birds, and putting a band on a bird is just a small little aluminum band that has a unique number on it. And none of the Purple Martins that we had ever banded had ever been recovered anywhere else or recaptured anywhere else. So we would band these birds and keep our fingers crossed that somebody would find it and report it. And it had never happened. But then in 2000, when the Purple Martins started to roost down at the Schermerhorn, we, my question was, we have these birds that are just 9 miles south of Nashville. I wonder if our birds are joining that roost after they fledge before they head down to South America. And putting a band on it won't answer that question, really. And so that's when we decided to put radio transmitters on some of our nestlings to see if they join that roost. And so we got a special federal permit to do that. And the first year we did that in 2021, we put 6 transmitters on. One of them, I think, was the transmitter was a dud, but 5 of those birds we detected at the roost. And so that kind of answered our question of, yes, our birds do. And then my next question the following year was, I wonder if other birds in other areas, the surrounding areas. And so that's when I reached out to David and said, hey, you guys have purple martins. Would it be okay if we started putting transmitters on your birds here? And so that's how that sort of all got started.
Awesome. Yeah. So what did you find out with these birds? Are they going to Nashville too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. This year we've been doing it, I guess, since 2022, but this year we put 6 transmitters on birds here, and all 6 have been detected. Both we have a handheld receiver where we can go down, but we also, Bridgestone has allowed us to put a temporary receiver station up on their Bridgestone Tower right in downtown Nashville, and that's allowed us to also detect all of our radio tagged birds when they're in the area. And so all 6 of the Ellington birds have been detected by that Bridgestone station. So we know they're going down there. Wow. So that's been really neat just to kind of answer that question. But I think there's the other things that are really, we have learned from this. I think one of the most interesting things is there's a group of us, the Tennessee Regional Modus collaboration that we started a few years ago, and David is, and TWRA is part of that group. But so when I was in graduate school, you would put transmitters on birds, and if those birds left your study area, that was it. You never knew what happened to them. Right. So these guys up in Canada said, what if we actually shared our information and collaborated?
Well,
and
that sounds like a good idea.
Crazy idea. And so they started this organization called MOTUS, MOTUS. And the idea is that all of these different researchers across North and South America can use the same radio frequency and share their data collectively. And so now there's a network of receiver stations. If you go to modus.org, you can see all of these receiver stations. Nice. And over the last few years, we went from having 0 in Tennessee up to, I don't even know how many
about
we have.
30 now.
Yeah, we have a lot in Tennessee. Wow. And it's the same thing across all of, David's been involved with getting more receiver stations in the southeastern U.S. And so because we now have these receiver stations, what we have started to learn from our radio tag purple martins is that when they're at the nest and then they fledge, so they leave the nest for the first time, they spend about a week really close to our nesting area, learning how to fly, learning how to forage. I saw a bird the other day that had fledged for the first time. You could tell he left the gourd and he had no idea what he was doing. And he flew way up to the top of this tree that had no branches on it. And he tried to perch a few times, and he finally grabbed a hold of a branch, and then he fell over backward and was hanging like a bat for about 30 seconds until he figured out. So you think like these birds, they don't know how to fly. They don't know how to do anything. Right. So they're spending about a week learning how to be a purple martin. And then that's when they start to join these roosts. But one of the things with this network of receiver stations is we're learning that during the day, they're foraging through a huge area of Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky. Even we've had birds detected going all the way up into Southern Kentucky and then coming back down to Nashville at the night. Mm-hmm. So that's something that really we didn't know before. And then we've also had some of our birds on their way down to South America, down to Brazil. They're being detected by receiver stations in Costa Rica and Mexico. And so we're starting to get an idea of their migration path as well.
Nice.
That's so just within a few years, from just putting bands on and not really learning anything, to in the last few years starting to really learn a lot more about their life history and their annual life cycle, which is really important from a conservation perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what's so exciting about this technology.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're able to determine migration routes, stopover locations.
It's a game changer in the world of ornithology.
Yeah. And it's not just purple martins, right? I mean, it's all kinds of birds, Yeah.
And bats.
And bats.
Yeah.
Hey, tell us a little bit about the transmitters themselves that you put on the birds.
Yeah, so there's There's a couple of different companies that make these wildlife transmitters. We've been using transmitters from a company called Cellular Tracking Technologies, and what I like about those, the reason we've been using them is that they, a few years ago, are now making them with solar, so they're solar powered. And so so for birds in particular, through the bird banding laboratory, we're required to put anything that goes on a bird has to weigh less than 3% of their body weight just to make sure that it's safe for the birds. And the problem with transmitters before these solar ones was that the battery is what's heavy.
Right.
And so you couldn't put them on small birds or bats. And with all of the nanotechnology and then these solar transmitters, it's really, you're able to put them on smaller and smaller birds. Like David's doing stuff with golden wing warblers, which, 5 years ago, you could never put a transmitter on a golden wing warbler that would last a year. And so it's really that all of that stuff is really changing the technology.
So I guess with it being solar, then it's kind of perpetual, right? I mean, how long does that thing last?
Well, what's interesting is, like, for example, I was down at the roost the other night, and a bird that we put a transmitter on last year at Warner Park Nature Center, I detected him or her, I'm not sure, at the roost. But I mean, that's something that, again, a few years ago, we never would have had a transmitter that the battery would have died.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's solar powered, theoretically, it could last the life of the bird, which, again, will just allow us to learn more and more and more about, are they coming back here every year? Are they going somewhere else?
Yeah.
Pretty amazing stuff.
And I think we may not have touched on this during the show. We touched on it before, but what size is the bird when you tag it, when you put that tag?
Yeah, so for purple martins, the recommendation is that we put the tag on when they're exactly 20 days of age. And so at 20 days of age, they're still in the nest. They have started to get some feathers, but they're not ready to fledge yet. They're not ready to fly yet. But at 20 days of age, they're the size of an adult. So they weigh about 50 grams. They're the same size. And so when you put the transmitter on, it will fit them when they're an adult as well. But they're too young to be able to fly off. And so they're sort of the sweet spot where that's the age we put them on.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, looking over my list here, I think we covered a lot of this. Anything else that we're missing that you want to make sure we cover today?
Yeah, so this was the whole catalyst to create Nashville and make that an urban bird treaty city, and so that's a designation by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the city. And what we're trying to do, this group, is just trying to establish communications and make sure we're not all working in silos. And so the goals of this urban bird treaty are, one, to conserve and protect habitat within the city. Second, to reduce bird hazards. And so we have Bird Safe Nashville here that's looking to reduce window collisions, and light pollution is another thing that birds can cause their demise, just by circling around these lit buildings downtown. And so then the third is just education and outreach, just trying to educate as many people as we can about birds.
That's right.
Yeah. That's cool. If you get a chance, go downtown and try to watch them, right? Is that the best way to watch them roost and find
Absolutely. And I would say, if you're interested in volunteering, go to NashvilleMartinRoost@gmail.com, and we can get you signed up to volunteer and go down and engage folks on the amazing migration phenomena that's happening in downtown Nashville.
Awesome. Wear your Titans jersey.
And a hat.
Yeah.
Hey, the light pollution thing, that might have an effect or a reason why maybe the Titans are a little darker over there. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just guessing.
Yeah, I still think they're fans.
Oh, yeah, I do too, yeah. I can see that little teeny jersey that just 0.7 ounces.
Oh, there's a sticker. We can make some stickers.
I think you're onto something.
Yeah, a little marketing. Yeah, there we go. Well, appreciate you, Laura, for being here. And
Absolutely,
David, thank you for coming and lining this up for us. And if you have a chance, volunteer. If you have a chance, go downtown, watch them. Come by our office and check them out, and it's neat.
Yeah, it is. And thanks for all the great work y'all are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, this is Tennessee Wildcast. Keep coming back, keep watching, keep listening, and we'll see you next time.
Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Join us as we celebrate 75 years of conservation in our great state. You can invest in Tennessee's wildlife future by purchasing a license at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. That's GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.